Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to be discussing Westworld Season 3, Episode 5, Genre, and Episode 6, Decoherence. Now, full disclosure, I hated Episode 5. That's the reason why I did not review it until now. But we'll start with it and then get to the episode I actually enjoyed, surprisingly. Episode 5, Genre. So, most of the episode involves Caleb following Dolores around in her effort to acquire Rehoboam's data while he's under the influence of a mind-altering drug, genre, which apparently warps perceptions of sight and sound. It was an incredibly boring episode despite pretty good action sequences, precisely because Caleb wasn't that into it being under the influence. And Dolores doesn't break from her blank expression even when it seems she has or would have some concern for Caleb's well-being or the situations that she's getting him into. Speaking of blank expressions, the rest of the episode concerns the origin of Rehoboam and Sirach's backstory, including the first 10 minutes of the episode, which is told almost entirely through narration as the younger versions of Sirach and his brother take turns staring. Their story is one we were already well aware of. The only reason I can think of for bringing up the brother again and his being an outlier is that the show intends at some point for him to also become a host. Now, with a mind as brilliant as his to come up with this program, that storyline might hold promise, as he could very well become a powerful host. Unfortunately, though, if this episode was intended to make me care about this character, I wouldn't say that it did a very good job. The backstory felt repetitive, the acting was weak, and the whole thing was just stale. That said, we do learn this episode that it was the Scotsman who we heard Bernard talking to in the preview when he asked, "Have you ever questioned what she's asking you to do?" recognizing the individuality of this particular version of Dolores. The answer is apparently not, because he uses the key to Rehoboam just as she asked and released on the world the machine's data, which showed each individual what it knows about them, but also predictions for their future. And, as you might imagine, chaos erupts. Episode 6, Decoherence. This episode follows William and Charlotte primarily, so we'll start with William. If you recall from episode 4, Dolores says to William, "I promised I'd let you destroy yourself someday. Here we are at last." And sure enough, this episode we see William destroy his various former selves. Granted, it's part of an AR therapy program, but it makes you wonder even more if this is in fact a simulation within a simulation, because her words read exactly as if from a script, and at that time, she didn't have access to Rehoboam's predictive programming. In addition, the scene calls to mind the method by which hosts arrive at consciousness, through suffering, yes, which many have pointed out, but also through the awareness and convergence of their prior lives. Along those lines, since leaving the park, William has questioned his existence. After this experience, he concludes it doesn't really matter. This perspective should aid him in crossing successfully from human to host, so long as his mind is sufficiently grounded in existence without condition. It shouldn't reject reality once implanted into a host body. And lastly, we learn in this episode that William has an unknown protein in his blood. We don't yet know the consequences of this, but I guess it may also contribute to his ability to survive the transition, a genetic advantage perhaps. And I do have to wonder whether Bernard will have a role to play in that transformation the same way Arnold did with Dolores. At the end of this episode, as chaos erupts from the release of Rehoboam's data, Bernard and Stubbs find William and rescue him. This will potentially grow their alliance against Dolores, at least for now. Speaking of alliances against Dolores, Maeve appears briefly in this episode. Her pearl has been restored to Sirach's lab, from which he'd previously tried to escape. Sirach has also brought online Hector's pearl, which enables Maeve to restore him to aid in her fight. And last but not least, we learn that Dolores' pearl, previously in the Scotsman, has been recovered, albeit badly damaged. Maeve uses the opportunity to communicate with this version of Dolores, who in turn attempts to flip Maeve, telling her that they're both neither saints nor sinners. They're survivors. But there's no trust there on either side. Dolores cannot be trusted not to harm Maeve's daughter, and Maeve cannot be trusted with the information Serac seeks, especially since we know for sure that he's clearly trying to wipe out all of Host's kind. And so, at a standstill, Dolores concludes the thing to do is destroy Maeve's allies. While she's not sure exactly how the other Dolores will accomplish this, since their thinking has diverged, Dolores Prime is on top of it. Maeve witnesses Dolores' other self and Charlotte walk into the lab, take Hector's pearl, and smash it to dust. Maeve's expression of pain as she watched it happen, holding Hector in her arms as he faded away, was so incredibly moving. But I wouldn't expect anything less from this character or this actress. She's proven that she can do a phenomenal job even when the script isn't that great. But she wasn't the only one to lose someone this episode. Charlotte has been a character struggling with the emotions of old Charlotte and growing connections to her family and her loyalty to Dolores and the survival of her people. In this episode, those bonds are both tested, as Dolores has tasked her with copying the host data from Serac, an incredibly dangerous undertaking, and she's concerned about the welfare of her family if she's caught. Nevertheless, she pursues the objective, but not without first making a call home, a decision she'll come to regret. It was so out of character for the old Charlotte that it triggered a signal to Serac via Rehoboam that this new Charlotte must be a host. Dolores has repeatedly, and even in this episode, warned her, that this is not her family. But hers is a far greater devotion to that family than the old Charlotte would have ever demonstrated. Knowing the truth, Serac sends his goons after her, forcing her to shoot her way across the facility, even calling upon her giants to aid in her escape. She makes it home, gathers up her family, and plans to go where they won't be found. But little does she realize, those goons are already at her home. A bomb has been planted in her vehicle, and when it ignites, the car explodes, killing her family before her eyes. She escapes because she's a robot, burned but broken. Will her loyalty to Dolores or Serac stand? Or will she join Maeve, Bernard, Stubbs, and William to end them both? Final thoughts. After last week's monumental disappointment, this episode 6, came out of nowhere in terms of action, excitement, and Westworld-style storytelling. I really enjoyed it overall. Still, I was left with questions, such as, why doesn't Dolores ever kill Maeve when she has the chance? Going for Hector's pearl first just didn't make any sense. Serac is a human who apparently spends much of his time on a plane, so why hasn't Dolores not been able to tap into the system and bring it down? She can control other electronic vehicles, why not planes? And why wouldn't Maeve trust Dolores to protect her child? Unlike Serac, Dolores at least wants to preserve and protect Host's kind. Serac is the only one willing to kill them. I mean, he's the only one who has. Maeve's faith seems misplaced, in my opinion. Or it could be rooted in the belief that Dolores simply can't win. But what do you guys think? We only have 2 episodes left, so drop your predictions for episode 7 in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.